I'm going to ask it in a fairly simple form and intentionally leave it open-ended so you can respond in a way that suits you. I'm interested in the relationship between the therapeutic process and the educational process, both in terms of how you think it should be, as well as in terms of how you think it is in our contemporary culture.
Yes, well, for me, the educational processes, the educational methods are by the same psychotherapeutic methods, only adjusted to the special conditions of the individual or a group. But basically, they are not important differences. I think that's more multidimensional, more multi-level we will have our education, less we will have necessity to treat people in a special condition and with special problems. This means I am not of this opinion that after, how I can say, reformation of our education, all psychotherapeutic problem, all troubles will go out. No. But after all, I am sure this will be very clear diminution of special cases if we will develop very largely, very deeply, very multidimensionally our system of education. A system of better education will I think, elaborate system of prophylaxis against troubles and even against, permit me such expression, special psychotherapy. Am I clear here?
Now, I'm not sure what the prophylactic is, and I'm not sure what the special education is that you're referring to now. I imagine that you're talking about possibility that education, perhaps especially for people who have the dynamisms that appear at, say, especially at the fourth level of development, would be qualitatively different than the education as we know it, say, within the university system now. Is that what you're referring to? The possibility that there may be special
Yes, I am
programs?
speaking about general improving of our philosophy, models, and methods of education. I think about very large differentiation of our education, based also on principle of multidimensionality and multilevelness. In such conditions, I think that education will help, and much help, in prophylaxis against severe form of psychoneurosis, of psychosis, and of for instance, of tendency for suicide, and so on and so on.
So it would help, presumably by giving individuals a chance to, again, I use the term positively withdraw from
Yes.
Day-to-day reality. In what other ways might it help?
No, well, this will give chance for many people, especially sensitive people, to see their value, creativity, possibility, and to help them in positive development. And through this will be such education will play a role of prophylaxis against severe forms of, I repeat, psychoneurosis and psychosis and suicide and so on.
Does this also mean that, like therapy, the educational mode needs to be matched to the level of development of the individual?
Surely.
Does this suggest to you that perhaps there needs to be a anything a match between the individuals who teach, especially gifted, and those who show the most potential for development?
No, I am rather against to elitarian school for gifted, generally speaking. But I am for preparation of teachers and educators to understand and to see in so-called homogeneous group also many gifted, many sensible, many people with high potential for development. To see them and to treat them in another manner. Because now we have very deep drama with children, with gifted children. For instance, you have children who is gifted in the field of music, in the field of arts, in the field of mathematics especially. And many teachers ask from them the same level in all subjects, like in this subject, in relation to which they are gifted. And I have seen drama, I have seen not one, not 10, and not 100 suicide with such a factors in relation. Why to do this? Why not to elaborate, to create conditions where gifted children could elaborate their abilities, and when teachers will not ask them too much in relation to other subjects. Why not to be a bit and why not to understand better such a children? Why to ask for this unanimity in all objects? This is first problem. If teachers will look at this, if teachers and educators will be prepared for such a differentiated problem, I think that many drama and even many tragedies will be, well, diminished. And they are such a hundred of such a problems. This is not one problem. For instance, you have children, they are timid, and they have fear before answer in large group. And well, almost nobody from teachers and educators will understand the problem that this child in a special conditions or asked alone, well, will give much more effect, and will give much more higher answers in relation to this or another subject. I have had here many drama. I remember one student who was extremely gifted and who was, well, rejected 3 times in the university at the examination. And after multidimensional diagnosis, I asked Dean of the faculty to permit to ask him as alone. Well, and believe me, this was something incredible. He was in 2 years one of the best students in the same subject at the university. And well, this is education, this is psychology, this is differentiation of people. And well, I think that's to gather together many gifted in one school, this will be something artificial. But to prepare teachers and educators towards such a problem, which is very important, because this is, after all, higher abilities, giftedness and so on, this will be possibility of diminish the negative side of such a problems and even, well, resolve in good way many of such a problems.
We talked before how it seems important for an individual to be a very highly developed personality before he may even be able to recognize that potential in others, as well as, I believe, some of the multi-leveledness and differentiation among other people. Does this mean that among the selection criteria for teachers there should be taken into consideration some of the aspects of the stages or levels of development?
Sure.
So it's not simply a matter of, in effect, encouraging or you mean trying to train teachers in the differentiation of the students which they're responsible for, but in part a matter of selection of those individuals to be our teachers.
Surely, for this reason, not only in relation to teachers' education and educators' education, but also in relation to problem of preparation of appropriate psychotherapists, social workers, nurses, and so on, I always propose to organize school for mental health as separate school, academic school, or as a faculty or even small department, and to show how people with program of mental health, this means general problems of mental health and mental hygiene, chosen problem of psychopathology, educational psychology, developmental psychology, social work, sociology, and many things, and primarily this education people toward synthetic multidimensional approach to the problem of individual and group. This means after passing through such a program, and in the same program, to educate them toward multidimensional aspects through diagnosis and through education and so on. And this will be, I think, one of the most valuable point in progress toward understanding of human groups and human individuals, specially gifted, especially prepared for development.
Your primary emphasis here has been on recognition of and sort of individual treatment of differences between students. There has been some recent emphasis given to the importance of so-called affective education. It's taken a variety of forms, but when attempts have been made to encourage what has been referred to as affective education, the educational enterprise begins to sound much more like a therapeutic one. Is something like what has been referred to as affective education helpful, in your opinion, toward developing human potential?
Well, this means out of the problem of psychotherapy, yes? If I understand.
Yes. I'm referring here to some of the educational efforts made by people like Carl Rogers, who tried to suggest that part of what is missing in education is attention to self-exploration and
sure,
and so on.
I agree clearly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you think that this has an important role in the educational process itself?
Yes.
I think that raises a particularly poignant dilemma at the university level, where students especially are introduced to a wide variety of topics, ranging from physics to religion, other aspects of the humanities, as if they were intellectual disciplines about which they should know and which they should sort of cultivate as intellectual disciplines, almost removed from that process of self-exploration that we're referring to. Is this an institutional problem that is simply highlighted in the universities, or do you see the universities, as I do, as a place where this polarity is perhaps at its extreme, the polarity between
yes, I understand.
Cultivating
Perhaps,
intellectual
yes.
endeavors as opposed to affective?
Yes, perhaps university especially is closed towards the problem of emotional instinctive functions, and too much emphasize scientific aspects. Even the university teachers dislike the intellectual research attitude toward emotional problems, because perhaps they could understand methods, intellectual methods, but they do not understand subject. And for this reason, adjustment of intellectual methods to the completely different problem are very difficult to accept. But well.
Excuse me, would you, just on a tangent for a moment, would you make a very firm distinction between, say, the natural as opposed to the social sciences and the humanities, or between the, say, exact sciences versus the inexact sciences? Do you feel that a useful distinction, or does that, in fact, go counter your...
No. I do not think so. This is exact. I think that we can have the same, how we can say, strictness, clearness, for instance, in humanistic psychology, like in physiology. But this kind of strictness will be of another, perhaps, of another kind. Much more large, much more multidimensional, much more multi-sided and multi-level, but of the same clearness, I think. But this will be other kind, and many teachers of the university do not accept this. Well, you discussed, Professor, this problem, which is for me dramatic, even, excuse me for such expression, tragical. I think that mostly of the university teacher, especially in education, in psychology, present one-sided attitude. And I can say even terribly one-sided. I think that they are lacking this attitude of subject-object toward oneself. For instance, I observed for many years that people, teachers of experimental psychology, teachers of behavioristic psychology, do not have almost any ability to do diagnosis of individual with many troubles or diagnosis of group. This means they are, I suppose, in something like abstractive space. They are very clever and they are very intelligent, but this field is in abstraction from the life. And through this point, even I try to explain. I am not sure I am right. I have right, but this rather negative attitude of experimental psychologists and even some of behavioristic psychologists in relation to clinical psychology. Because, well, I perhaps they are, but I never found people representing narrow field of experimental psychology and behavioristic psychology which is apt to do good multidimensional diagnosis of the problem. And I am asking myself where we are. Why such a negative attitude toward clinical psychology?
As you talk about that, I'm reminded of the many discussions of specialization within academia, contemporary academia. Is your suggestion that perhaps within the university setting we need some professors and people in positions to teach who are generalists of some sort?
This means I am not against specialization in some fields of science, surely. For instance, mathematics, for instance, technology and physics and so on and so on. I am not against IUP, well, in erroneous way, but I think about how I can say, biological, biopsychological, biohumanistic sciences. As Monakov told us, all psychology means large biology. Well, and here we should have a very large, multidimensional, and not very limited field of interests. After all, if we are not good candidates for teaching teaching psychology, education, psychopathology, and so on for human beings, for students. And well, excuse me, please. I want connect this with my discussion with you. I think that with such opinions, I am always in a bit of danger. And this explains some resistance toward such a theory.
May I express some of that resistance for a moment?
Yes, sure.
It seems to me that what you're doing is sort of in a tradition which is becoming more and more respectable. We see a man like Wilhelm Reich, for example, applying his psychology to politics and institutions, and more recently Marcuse and others. Isn't there something that, you know, from a very, I guess, abstract or academic side, that might be called sort of psychologicalization or psychologizing in some way? Isn't there a tendency that, for example, the way institutions are organized is to some extent a function of the development of individuals? But surely there is also something over and above that. There is the various institutions as they've been historically formed, as they surround themselves, as groups of people in these institutions surround themselves according to certain principles. Would you be prepared to apply the theory of positive integration, the idea of development, to institutions as readily as you would to people?
No,
to history as readily as you would to people?
Surely and clearly, but I am not sure if some institution will accept this. This means I proposed for about 30 years already to organize some small institution in which we can do research from multidimensional, multi-level points of view, where we can do our clinical psychology, where we can do psychotherapy and so on, without too great amount of money, and to look at and to show the work and result by this principle of positive psychic infection. Mm-hmm. But this is something society feels something even here, something like dangerous factor.
Is that almost like resistance in
I think so, because you know this is so easy. For instance, with my experience. After all, I have rather multidimensional and large experience. Why to resist toward giving me, for instance, liberty to organize something like such an institution, and to show or stimulate terrible critics. After all, with my experience, this is better to be in silence and not to be, you know, not to go toward criticism of many, and not to risk. And I was a risicant in this. I wanted to show such a things. And this was in the beginning very good. And even we observed, in my opinion, very high effects. But after, this was like Europe, you know, something like destiny, wars, terrible wars, a new system of politics and so on. And all this disappeared. Here in Canada, I always presented such a projects. And this was possibility. Even we have been very near to create such an institute. Mm-hmm. But in the last months or weeks, somebody who was very great, how I can say, not potential for development, but potential to decide something, was against. Why? For the benefit of society. Why to be against? But this is something in human beings like negative resistance.
I believe that resistance is on the increase now. My impression was that perhaps in the late 60s, the emphasis on Maslow's concept of psyche and management, and there's some of the suggestions for institutional change, including educational institutions, met with resistance, but also with some reception. But more recently, I think especially educational administrators have begun to reconsider the politics of being administrators, and within that orientation begun to move away from what they refer to as the soft-nosed human relations approach, in favor of the greater efficiency that they imagine is one of the high priorities now within complex organizations.
Yes.
I think this is something that is a frequent response to plans or attempts to change institutional patterns, and that is, institutions are doing something and they have to be organized in a fairly sort of inhuman way, because otherwise they won't be able to perform efficiently if they aren't so organized. How do you respond to an argument like that?
Well, and even perhaps you permit me to say this, that in this country this is surely, in my opinion, better in comparison with others. In others country this is even less less possibility to advance something. Well, I agree with you, with your essence of your question. That I can only say.
So, does that mean that there is some basic incompatibility between, say, functioning within an efficient organization and developing within an organization as a human being? There's a basic incompatibility there?
Surely. But this depends what we mean by efficiency, you know. Efficiency, for instance, is, well, externally seen effectivity, productivity, accomplishment of interest of many clever people and so on. And efficiency could be understood like creativity, like development. And this is, I think, social fight between one attitude and another. For me, this is very clear, as we discussed the problem of psychoneurotics and psychopaths and normal people and so on. This is interplay of many groups.
Would you see an inherent contradiction, for example, between recent reports in education, even in this province, that would advocate equal opportunity for education as it's presently practiced in say, most of North America, and the use of such terms as, which are vaguely used as actualization? In other words, there's an attempt to, I think, apply education across the board to everyone, and at the same time to recognize that people should, via this education process, actualize, whatever that might mean, their own potential. It seems to me there might be some inherent contradiction there from your perspective.
Surely, well, because, well, what means to give opportunity for all people? Opportunity should be based on very clear, very multidimensional diagnosis of individual diagnosis and group diagnosis of such an opportunity, of such a potential for development, and to apply special method toward stimulate such opportunity. Because with verbalistic attitude, well, we give opportunity for all. Excuse me, this means not too much.
It means treating a wide variety of individuals in one way. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes. I told you these two cases of children and young people, young students and so on. Well, if you will ask professors, they will say you, well, we gave all opportunity. This student could pass through exams 3 times. They did not pass, that's all. In reality, this is any opportunity.
It seems to me that the public school education has sort of vacillated between, on the one hand, dominated by curricula or curriculum which becomes the most important part, and the other side where the student is asked to develop, or the teacher simply guides the student to develop. It seems to me vacillate between those two extremes. Also, it seems to me that that is almost a necessity for the size of our educational system. As Don earlier mentioned, it's somewhat almost built into the institution. Would you advocate separate school systems where, say, if sufficient numbers of people could get together and of course, given the opportunity that they could educate teachers in a manner, say, according to the theory and development, that such separate school system within a society like ours would be more or better in a position to serve the individual and his development?
I think so. I am not against separate school. I think that's in the future. Well, I cannot say how long will be this future, but well, 100 or 200 or 300 years, the problem of separate school will be diminished like a problem. But now I am not against, but I am for very different level and kind of preparation of teacher in each group of separate schools. This is obligatory high level of preparation for teaching, for education in schools, and this is exists in a very small extent. I am not sure I am clear here. This is not against kind of separate school, but against insufficient preparation of teachers and educators in all schools.
Okay, but there seems to be a sort of inherent clash here, because I think in our previous discussions, we have seen that much of our society and the controlling aspects of society are controlled by people who lack this type of development. Hence, it seems to me that an institution like education, which is a particularly domineering institution in our society, would also be governed by this type of person. So it seems to me that as an alternative, and you mentioned earlier when you were speaking about a reformation rather than a revolution in institutions, that it requires almost for people to move out of a public school system into private institutions in order to attain what they need, what they desire.
Yes, in some extent, yes. And for this reason, I come back to my proposition of a special institution in all fields, in parental life, in school life, at the university, in professional life, and so on, in industry, of small institution which could act as centers for positive infection. This means if you could have, for instance, one university organized in harmony with such a programs. If we could have in Edmonton, for instance, one center, prophylactic center, like mental health center, but on the basis of this, one mental hospital, some schools, well, they could act through such a positive infection. And this is one possibility. And this is answer for your question, for your very important question, I think. To find some group of friends, they could begin such a work and act through positive infection. But I can say that societies and many decisive factors will dislike this, even if such a centers will give plenty of effects. This is something tragical.
Several minutes ago, you suggested that within the educational setting there may be too much of a sort of one-sided emphasis on scientific approach. And if I understood you correctly, that was what you were describing. In the context of your description of theory of positive disintegration, you refer frequently to the importance of the humanities, encouraging people to sort of explore their own developmental process through drama, through literature, whether they are creating their own or observing that of others. Is it your opinion that at all educational levels, the humanities are being short-circuited, perhaps by an overemphasis or a one-sided approach, which could be called scientific?
Yes. I am of this opinion. This means, could you be so kind not to remind that, well, I am never against natural sciences or very strict program of research and so on. After all, I am, for my preparation, neurologist, psychiatrist, and I spent it many times in laboratories like this. Well, but I think that's our point of view. In schools, at the university, should be multidimensional. This means not in such a condition that's like many American universities, and even European universities and Canadian, that's, well, this is prevalence of one direction and of one field, of psychology, with special attitude of psychologist or pedagogist or psychiatrist and so on.
I think there are two
this
ways.
Would be, if you permit me, for aggressivity. I dislike the term destroyed, but after all, diminished and well, put out from our programs.
It seems that there are two ways to talk about the multiple aspects of the educational process. One is to emphasize sort of heterogeneity of the subject matter that an individual has access to and is able to concentrate on, ranging from the humanities, the social sciences, to the natural sciences. I'm more concerned right now about the possibility that in areas like history and the study of the arts, there is something like a scientific attitude being introduced into the educational setting, encouraging students, perhaps more than, at least in my judgment, is necessary, to adopt an objective approach to the study of literature, for example, and in effect asking them to leave themselves out of it. Is your impression like mine, that this is a prevalent attitude even within the instruction of the humanities?
Yes. This means I agree with you. This means my point, most important point, is that we should adjust our programs to special abilities and potential of individuals and of a group of children and young people. Without this, we will have failure after failure. And this is one point, bicycle point, such a point, that we have so many people, they do not want to finish university studies. And even they do not want to finish high school studies. And many movement like negative current of hippies, because I see positive also, very clearly positive. And for instance, this pathological aspects of narcomania and so on, is among others guided, among others, by this problem. This means lack of possibility to develop in the way of own potential for development, own abilities, own interests. This is something like different kind of revolution toward something rigid, something, how I can say, not plastic, not flexible.
Not flexible.
Yes.
But, okay, I think there have been sort of a number of people in the last decades suggested that education is in crisis, which is somewhat mundane, but is in crisis because, in fact, students have nothing to commit themselves to, or they continually have to postpone decisions they make. There's no... Now, it seems to me that, again, you're saying that this is a matter of the inability for them to develop personally, but it seems to me there's also something external to that. That is, there are no values being held out to them, values that, in a sense, they require development in order to make those values their own, But at the same time, it also depends upon things or events outside of their own development. In other words, what I'm concerned with is that, say, the entire movement like we've seen during the 60s is entirely attributed to the impossibility of students to, say, develop within the present system.
Yes.
It's also because there are no values in that system worth developing that stand quite outside individuals within that system.
I agree with you, but I think that these 2 points are in very, very great harmony. Well, if you do not recognize potential for development of some individuals and group, you do not recognize also something like models for development. Because models for development should be in some harmony with potential for development. And next, philosophy of education and philosophy of development should be in harmony with potential of development, with models of development, inside, in inner psychic media and outside. And we do not see this. Because after all, our system of value is paralyzed through positivistic philosophy, through many methods of psychology, many ways of psychology, and so on and so on. This is a relativistic philosophy, relativistic psychology, relativistic attitude in education, and so on. And I think that we are before something like epoch to come back to something like system of anti-relativistic philosophy. This means models, philosophy, and potential. They are together all. Well, by this I agree with you.
I'd like to just go off a little bit from the line that we've been following. And you've mentioned the word prophylactic earlier.
Yes.
I wonder if I could pursue that a little more. Presumably, psychoneurotic symptoms or psychoneurotic development, disintegration, is prophylactic towards what? Mental illness? Does it immunize people against mental illness?
Towards psychosis, yes.
Towards
if they are not very severe psychoneurosis, and if they meet some help, well, they create very strong system of prophylaxis. But you know, even in treatment of mentally ill, you can have something like methods of prophylaxis. But in relation to our methods of treatment, we never, excuse me for such an expression, we never commit prophylaxis. we do treatment which is not treatment. If you send, for instance, severe psychoneurotics or catatonics or even something like acute schizophrenic to hospitals in such organization, you have 90% for this, that this will be deterioration. And well, if you could treat by other methods, you will create by the same prophylaxis against severe psychotic illnesses. Severe, excuse me, all psychotic. Many psychiatrists will tell you that all psychotics are severe, not in my opinion. For instance, take such an example. If you could have something like houses for relaxation, for severe psychoneurotics, and even for some kind of schizophrenics, without central work of psychiatrist, but rather marginal. But if you have a good psychotherapist, social workers, nurses, people educated in school for mental health with multidimensional aspect, and if you give there something like friendship, love, understanding, dynamization of potential, you will have created prophylaxis, and you will observe diminution of number of patients in mental hospitals. In the future, I see that mental hospitals will be reduced in numbers, and well, we will be in the service of very severe psychotics. This means organic psychosis and dementia and something like this, and some chronic schizophrenics. But for mostly of people, this will be not necessary if you elaborate system of outpatient departments, but with people like I presented to you. If you will organize such a, if you permit me, houses for relaxation with such organization, or well, mostly of mental hospital will be not necessary or reduced to a number of 15–20% of until now existing patients. If you will see such a look at such a hospitals like I have seen, and in Quebec and in Montreal and even here in West Canada with, for instance, 2,000 patients, 3,000 patients. This is monster. This is something completely against any treatment and any prophylaxis. And well, excuse me, just one more thing. I observed here, well, many articles in journals against something like treatment on mental patients in hospitals and so on. And here was created a special commission. This commission, I cannot be sure, but work about 1 year or 1 year and a half, and gave something like, how I can say, like indications. And as I observe, nothing was changed after such a commissions and conclusions. This means commission is created to introduce some peace in attitude of readers and of journalists and so on. And after some time, well, all is going in the same way. And one more thing, psychologically very important. The members of such a commissions are coming from the same old, terrible hospitals and all badly, directed outpatient departments. They are the same people. They are responsible for low level. And what kind of conclusion they will give? Some small conclusions without any importance. Well, for this reason I emphasize this small centers with action through positive interaction. Because society will see something. Society will see clearly. As society sees difference between one psychiatrist and another, one psychologist and another, one teacher and another, and have, I can say, trust for some kind of psychiatrists and psychologists and teachers, and mistrust to others.
I hope society sees it, because we have such coy phrases around, like healthy mind, healthy body, or health is the absence of disease, and or health is being perfectly adjusted to your society. Do you sincerely hope that we can ever overcome that type of perspective?
This means the type of adjustment?
Yes, yeah.
To society.
Health is adjustment.
Healthy, this exists such a real fact. Healthy adjustment means partial positive maladjustment and partial adjustment toward hierarchy of aims in relation to development, yes? If you understand your society, if you are not angry always toward society, if you have a mild attitude toward many, even errors and difficulties, if you like society, and in the same time you are positively maladjusted, and you are searching for higher level of values, and you educate people in this way, you are perfectly partially adjusted and partially maladjusted, positively maladjusted.
Okay.
Professor Dąbrowski, if we are to, say, discuss another aspect of the educational process, what do you feel are the parental roles in the educational process?
No, very large and very deep. Only, you know, parentalhood is the most common phenomenon in life, and parentalhood is not based in mostly of cases on something like reflective, like elaborated, like of higher level, like based on subject-object in ourselves. But this is based in mostly of cases of very primitive instinctual drives. And mostly of marriages are realized by this way. We have not sufficient schools on the high level for parents or for candidates for parents. No. This is how I can say, in some extent primitive, sensual, instinctive tendency. And well, if this tendency will diminish and elaborate toward much more reflective, much more self-conscious, well, parentalhood will be the most, parents will be the most valuable factor in education. Now they are not. Some families are beautiful and very good and very conscious, and mostly are present no very high value.
How are parents then supposed to set up, or let's say prepare their children for an institutional process, as you have suggested? How are parents to do this?
No, you know, always this is problem of selection. Some parenthood, some parents should act through positive infection, to give something like not artificial but natural model of parenthood, of education, and so on. And this is I am very glad that this is always acting in history, but this is not sufficient. Now we should help to this attitude through something like institutional help, through school for parents, but not superficially organized. You know, the superficiality is less valued than to do nothing.
You're talking for a school of parents. I've always felt uncomfortable, for example, with increasing the time of schooling. Presently, there's a trend towards, for example, making kindergartens available university in the attempt so that parents may send their children or get rid of them as quickly as they can. It seems to me the whole trend in society is to get children out of the family as quickly as possible.
Yes, I agree with you, and this is terrible. And I agree with you. This means I think that our institution for children should abbreviate the time of spending in such an institution, the time of children, but to increase level and methods of education. And I think that's with something like education of candidates for marriage and of parents, I think that children should be more at the house, and more in group of playmates, and more in the nature, and more, well, but not to be in institutions.
What governs relationships, like in marriage or in friendship? I think it's very easy to say, or society has said, especially very recently, the emphasis has been on the term love. Within, from your perspective, that term also has, of course, levels of development. But does love, in fact, govern all these relationships equally, or in some sense? How are relationships in our society governed? By what are they governed?
Well, I can say only one thing. That's, well, I presented my point of view here. That's unification of term of love or aggressivity and of friendship, of sympathy, means not something important. I think that multi-levelness of such notions means much more. This means difference between primitive sexual drive and love on a higher level means something completely different. That's well as we discuss Socratic irony means completely something completely different than brutal aggressivity. That's friendship. Friendship, well, we like to use such words. So he's in very easy and very good friendship. This means nothing. Nothing. This is superficial sympathy, which can be changed in 5 minutes, in 2 hours, in a few days, in few weeks, and that will be ended. And friendship on the higher level, this will be school of something like necessary for higher development. And this is something completely different. And I think that we are sufficiently mature to introduce something like definite changes in our notions and terminology. Even for such a notion like love, we should perhaps elaborate many terms.
Does ethics, which traditionally, is a field of study in philosophy, become almost an empirical science now? I mean, do you see the possibility of building an ethics on a theory of development, of psychological development?
Surely, very clearly. And this is this approach that we can, from the called subjective field, elaborate field which could be treated by empirical method, by scientific method, and but by this scientific approach, this will be more comprehension between many group of scientists and so on. If you will surely apply, for instance, your scientific methods, your testing in relation to field of emotional instinctive functions, I think this will be very great victory, and this will be something very important toward approaching of natural science, strict science, and so-called humanistic sciences. Well, I'm not sure I'm clear here.
No, I find it very interesting. I mean, I also see that the possibility for aesthetics, for example, being based on that.
Surely, all fields of emotional instinctive functions. Because this point of view approach this large field of emotional instinctive functions toward intellectual functions and collaboration with intellectual and, if you permit me, and emotional methods, emotional in quotation mark.
Right, but now what happens is that we should, I guess, from the theory's perspective, is look at art and even the products of science, of course, but art in particularly, the ethics that governs the society, because it will give us an indication of the developmental level of that society as well.
Surely, and this is in preparation. I do this with one of my colleagues. This means multi-levelness adapted to society and social group and society. This means adapted to parenthood, toward school life, politics, industry, other professional works, and so on.
So psychologists would have a real role in, say, the study of history or the study of aesthetics.
Surely. This is enlargement, I can say, very great enlargement of interest and possibility of work for psychologists, for educators, and so on. But I think that in the first years, this will be
difficult. Impossible.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. You think psychologists
From
resisted your
many
theory,
sides.
wait till you try the historian.
From many sides.
Thank you very much.
Oh, please. Is that so?